Overtime.
Welcome back to Overtime, our podcast here at 5:31 PI, as part of our Pacific Grandstand show, which you can catch on a Saturday morning on 5:31 PI. I'm your host, Willie Poaching.
I'm your other host, Matt Manukolo.
And we are here, and Matty, this is our last episode for the season. A bit of a sad moment. We'll talk about the season so far. This has been our first actual season of doing the podcast, but how's things?
Yeah,
How are you?
Yeah, things are good. It's been a busy week, just prepping before I go to New at the end of the week, which obviously means that we will be out of action for a couple of weeks, but otherwise, nonetheless, work's good, life's good, always blessed. How about yourself, bro?
Yeah, good. I'll get your reflections on the podcast a little bit after, but as we do every week, we're a sports podcast. We chat sport, and we've championed a lot of our Pacifica sports people. We'll dive straight into the sport. Last week, big event, the All Blacks in Wellington against the Wallabies, getting the win 33-13, but it wasn't all one-way traffic. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I thought that, we spoke about it a little bit over the weekend in preparation for this game, but it was a must-win game for the All Blacks. They're coming back. Last week was a must-win game when they had the Bledisloe on the line, and that was a very, very narrow test over in Australia. So they had a huge task on their hands to not only go to Wellington and beat the Aussies, but to regain and restore some of their pride. But it was also important for them to wrap up this Rugby Championship, which has been a little bit wishy-washy for the All Blacks. I think they won 3, lost 3, and some of those losses were big losses, 2 of which to South Africa over in South Africa, and then one to Argentina. So it was an important game for the All Blacks, but I thought they did valiantly to put that curse at the cake tin to bed, but also let some of their standout players really put their hand up. I thought Wallace Titi, through his ball work and his ball play, really reminiscent of a young Jason Taumalolo, just an open space man. I talk about rugby in rugby league terms, but in that rugby union term, I think that his light footwork when he was able to make a break and open up space for Severisa to go over in the right corner, I thought that was really special. It was a tight game in that first half. I think the scores were separated by 6 at the break, and then obviously the All Blacks were able to edge further ahead in that second half, which hasn't been the case for them over the past couple of tests or throughout the whole year in general. But it seems like Scott Robertson has really honed in his men on how to close out and finish out games. There's still some niggles within the game, with some of the players, but I think that they performed valiantly, and it was great again to see Beauden Barrett at the number 10. Your thoughts, Willie?
Yeah, they came in with a lot of pressure, and they weren't convincing in the first test against Australia, and they needed to get a confident win, not just win the game. And obviously there was the hoodoo and the ghost of Wellington and not being able to win there. There's the curse of the Argentinian game not so long ago being there. So there was a lot for them to overcome, but they did it well. It was interesting to see how they had to come from behind. The Aussies started faster and scored early. But as you said, Wallace Atiti, amongst others, I thought, and I'm still not quite convinced, but Will Jordan was great at fullback at 15. And if he stays there, then I think Barrett has to be the 10. I think his direction, his flair to play and the danger that he presents. But I think one of the things they need is consistency. And I know the All Blacks have always had the depth to be able to change players and rotate the squad. And it is a long season on the back of Super Rugby. But if they can get some consistency, 9's a tough one. 9's a tough one going up to the Northern Hemisphere now. When I thought TJ was very good. He was at his tenacious best. He started a bit shaky. His first kick wasn't the best. He didn't find some distance on it, but he was back to his annoying best to the opposition and to the referees. And when you're in a team and you have someone like him, you love it. You love having someone like him. As a fan, you might not be one that grows on you, and it definitely as an opponent, it grates on your goat that you got someone so annoying, but he's so good to play with. Played with many a player like him. So it'll be interesting to see what Razor does now. It was interesting after the game to see Cam Roigard walking around the field. Reports that he's back running again.
Wow.
Missed pretty much all the Super Rugby season. Do they rush him back? Do they bring him back straight into the fold to support with Cortez Ratama? Finlay Christie looks like he's out of the equation now, unfortunately for him. But it'd be great for TJ to go up there and finish his All Black career on a high by going up there. Now, he's already finished on a high. He's played his last test in New Zealand, but it'd be awesome if he could go up there and give him some more experience. But the game itself, it was good for them to win. They finished second on the table. There was a danger of them finishing third, but they end up jumping over Argentina. But, yeah, I'm not sure. Question for you. How do you rate the All Blacks season so far, taking into consideration the 2 scratchy tests, taking nothing away from England? They win well in San Diego against Fiji, and then, as you said, the 50-50 percentage that they have in the championship at this moment in time in this year.
Yeah, I think I reflect on at the start of the year when Razor first called that small coaching, that training camp, which invited some of the All Black players after their World Cup loss, a final loss at the end of the year, just coming in early in the year and getting, it's his first year as the coach, and he's getting some of the players on board, getting those messages around that. We all thought and believed that it would be this unstoppable All Blacks team with Razor at the helm. Obviously, they had a bit of historic losses under the tutelage of Ian Foster over those years, and everyone was just excited for something fresh, something new. And with the prowess that Scott Robertson has carried from Super Rugby into the international arena, everyone's expecting high. And like you said, it was a bit scrappy, those 2 English tests over here, and people were believing in the cause, but still sort of on edge whether this All Blacks team really meant business. And I think their loss to Argentina in Wellington really hammered down about, and people started to question the credibility of Scott Robertson. Obviously, when you come into the coaching opportunity, such as coaching the national team of New Zealand, the most successful team in any sports history, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations. And unfortunately, they didn't rise to those expectations, and there was some selection issues, questionable selection, from people all across the media, spectators and analysts, of people being put here, people being put there. I think there was a lot of there was drama when the attacking coach, was it Liam McDonald? He left early, so then there was some trouble in paradise before they went over to South Africa. And obviously they went over to South Africa, had a couple losses there. Despite valiant efforts, they just weren't able to close out games in those last 20 minutes, really crumbled in those last 20 minutes. They came back to face Australia, where they, again, in that first test, the last 20 minutes was a hindrance of their performance, and then they came out at the weekend and got a win in the capital nonetheless. But there's still some questions about the credibility of the coach of Scott Robertson, and what type of coach he is, and what type of player and caliber of player that the All Blacks have currently. Now, I've seen some comments online and some comments from analysts about the selection of Beauden Barrett at number 10. He's 130 test capped Auckland All Black. Is he the future? I'm not sure. But just for Scott Robertson to put trust in a veteran player in these tests where they're trying to build towards the next Rugby World Cup, it was a questionable decision in some senses. But we know the type of player Beauden Barrett is, and how he contributes to the team. So there's all these questions now that we've finished the Rugby Championship. Everyone's like, what now? What next? We're preparing for the Northern Hemisphere tests, and are we ready? Do you think we're ready, Willie?
Yeah, I think we're building, and it's a difficult one. It's always difficult in test matches, whatever sport, because the country that you're representing and the country that the team is playing for, the people want success now.
Yep.
So the All Blacks, as a fan and as a country, we as Kiwis want the All Blacks to win every time they play. So it's always a gamble to try and look further forward. Is Barrett the best 10 right now that New Zealand has available? I think so. I think, and we praised Damian McKenzie on our radio show all season long for how good he was at the Chiefs. But for some reason, he just hasn't fired throughout the course of 80 minutes for the All Blacks this season. He's had ample opportunity to make that jersey his own, but he's come up with some howlers in games of errors. Some moments of quality, but some moments of madness at times. And so they've fallen back to Beauden Barrett, who's tried and trusted, been world-class, been World Player of the Year. And when he's come on in games this year from the bench, he won that second test against England at Eden Park through his know-how, through his kicking game, through his talent. I think the long-term plan is that Richie Mo'unga comes back for the World Cup.
Yep.
His contract in Japan is up; he'll still be available. So, talk about the future. That's almost going back to the future, if that is the case. And if he's still the best 10 around, then so be it. The country wants success every time they play, and I'll come back to that. So, whilst it's nice to see some young guys, and in an ideal environment, you'd have a team, as the All Blacks have had the luxury of being in the position of doing, is where the team is flying and you've got some seniority in the side and you're able to drip feed young players, 2 or 3, every single time so they get experience. And that's what they did with Rieko Ioane. That's what they've been able to do with him over the course of time, and Geordie Barrett. They were young fellas that came through. They had quality, Ma'anonu and Sonny Bill and those fellas around them to learn from, and then they've taken the mantle, and then all of a sudden they've got 70 tests. Now they're their experienced ones. You know what I mean? But that's when the team's not firing on all cylinders as you expect. It's a tough environment to bring a kid in sometimes. So the ideal situation of bringing someone in, who else is there? Who is the 10 that's going to take over if it's not Barrett? If Damian McKenzie's not firing. So those are the questions they've got to answer and they've got to find out.
Speaking of bringing youngsters in, I really want to highlight this young man because we talked about him before, but there's a lot of controversy when his selection when they omitted the highest try scorer in Super Rugby, Hoskins Sotutu, for that number 8 position, but they bought in and they trusted the young 21, now 22-year-old Wallace Titi. What are your thoughts on his year so far and his performances? You know, both in South Africa when he had that breakout performance, but also in those Wallabies tests when it was his first time playing in number 6, a different position than he's used to. But how important were these tests for the young Samoan boy? I've seen some comments of some leagueies have been trying to bring him over to the NRL, and someone said to him, I think Scott Robertson said to them, "We've got him for 10 years, leave him alone, go away." But I think he'd do well in NRL. But yeah, your thoughts on?
Yeah, well, this is something that I'm sort of alluding to. He's playing in a back row. On the weekend, he had Sam Cane and Ardie Savea around him. So, 2 very experienced, probably the most experienced players in the team, with a young debutant in his first season, a young rookie, coming into that environment. No better way to learn, and be surrounded. And he's growing. He's growing every single test and every facet, pretty much. His line-out jumping has been outstanding. As you said before, his broken play and that moment where he put some footwork on, left foot step, beat an outside back, and then offload in the same motion, that showed some class out of a young fella, and he's only going to get better and better. Let's talk about Rieko and Geordie Barrett being young fellas are coming and growing. I see him as a future leader of the side. If he can maintain that form and maintain his form that he had for the Chiefs this year, I think he's really one for the future that we're talking about and going ahead, because he's performing now too. He's doing it now. There's nothing to say he's got potential. He's got potential, but he is doing it right now. better than some of the others. And he's forced some quality, experienced blokes to sit on the sidelines. People like Luke Jacobson and Dalton Papali'i. He's holding a spot in front of them, which goes to show how much trust Razor's got in him, because he wasn't playing the first couple of tests, early doors, but obviously he's worked hard in training, earned the trust of the coaching staff, and now he's earning the trust of this playing group by what he's doing on the field. So there are some positives there for the All Blacks. The season so far for the ABs, give us a rating out of 10, taking into consideration what you're saying about the expectations we had of Razor and our expectations anyway of the All Blacks.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7. I think 7's a fair score. They weren't the worst, but they weren't the best. They've still got a lot of room to improve. That I expect that they will improve when it comes into these Northern Tests. But yeah, I think the losses to South Africa, there was a close one in their second test. There was a huge opportunity to go over there and topple them in over 2 games, but they weren't unable to. That loss to Argentina, I think that there was too many errors, too many disciplinary mistakes as well that really crippled them, and that's carried through. Even in their last test, where they got 2 yellow cards against Australia, so there's still some disciplinary stuff that they need to figure out. But I think 7's a fair score for them. Yourself?
Yeah, I give them a 6.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I give them a 6. I was there's so many hopes, and I've spoken about this before. The way that Razor was put into position whilst Ian Foster was still in the job, I thought it was difficult, but it showed the intention of the NZRU to have someone ready to go, and his record at Crusaders and his record in Super Rugby speaks for itself. And that's where the expectation came from, and we spoke about it before the All Blacks started, about them playing with the Canterbury flair. And yeah, I think he'll take a lot of learnings out of where they've been this year so far, and if they can put some learnings together in the next couple of weeks, they're going to have to do that in order to be good on a tough Northern Hemisphere tour. England were great down here. The first test, I remember people saying it was a fluke, that they got so close, but then it was only a 1-point difference at Eden Park, and All Blacks, as I said, Beauden Barrett came on and won the game for them. Twickenham in a couple of weeks, that's going to be a totally different proposition, and that's going to be a real test for Razor and his group. I don't think they've quite clicked yet, and the loss to Argentina was a real kick in the teeth, when you could give them the advantage of the England test was a moment where they're getting used to a new coach. They're getting used to a new style of play. Gave the young fellas an opportunity in Fiji, and they played really, really well. But then they put some of the big guns back. Some of those guys that fired against Fiji, like Caleb Clark, they got a chance against Argentina. But then to lose, not being disrespectful to Argentina, just like, oh, things aren't going as we expected. This is us as a country. The All Blacks aren't as threatening, they aren't as dominant. And I think now, where they're at, the rest of the world aren't threatened by them as they used to be.
Wow.
I don't think they are. You read some of the press, I don't think South Africa fear them anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've beaten them the last 4 times. They beat them in the World Cup final, albeit under some controversy, but beat them nonetheless. And there's some of those guys in that team that have never lost to the All Blacks, and you could never say that before. So how they get back to that and how they get that reputation back will be the big difference, especially heading into that World Cup that we're talking about. Who do you think, we've spoken about Wallace, is there anybody else who stood out for you this year?
Caleb Clark, the winger. We talked about him at the start of the year when he came in firing after the preseason. He looked fit, he looked fast and strong, and he looked like that for the Blues, and that helped lead them to their first wins in 20 plus years. And his for the All Blacks, that wing position is so sacred, it's so contested with the likes of Mark Telea, Will Jordan's there, you've got Sever Reese and you've got Caleb Clark there too, and they've got plenty of wingers, but I think that he really staked his claim throughout those tests, especially in those South African tests. He looked powerful and he looked strong to get over and to get those 2 tries, but I think he was a huge standout for me, and I think as he gets, because he's been a part of the All Blacks since I think 2019, 2020, and the more tests that he gets under his belt, you can see how more comfortable he is. He's had his off games in the black jersey. He's been omitted from that team for a little bit, but he came back, and I thought this year, especially in those tests for the Rugby Championship, as well as in the Rugby Championship, I think it really gave him an opportunity to show the selector and show the coach that he is still who he says he is. He is still one of the best wingers in the country, New Zealand, and he should be around that number 11 or number 14 jersey in the future and secure that for a bit. I think that he was outstanding. It was good to see Adi Savia as well play throughout the year. You know what to expect when it comes from a player like him. He puts on world-class performances every single game, but I remember there was a moment in that Australian team and he's carrying one of the players, like holding him like that, back 2-3 meters, and I'm like, man, it reminds me of when he carried Eben Etzebeth as well, when these big characters, and we've met him before, bro. We've met that guy, and he's a big dude, but his strength and his courage to lead the boys at vice captain as well was quite good for me too. So I thought that he had a really good year so far as well. Yourself?
Yeah, and my 2 players are the same that you've mentioned. Caleb Clark, I think he's shown a lot of maturity this year.
Yep.
To grow, and I've seen it many a time where a player's had a great pre-season, but complacency sets in and they get a bit wayward again. But he's, as you said, we spoke about it in pre-season. I think it was the Blues against the Chiefs in a pre-season game. He just looked really fit, fast, hungry, strong, and he's been consistently that way. And he was one of those guys that wasn't getting picked in the England series, but he's fought his way to be, I reckon, the number 1 winger at the moment for them. He scored 2 tries on the weekend, and he's doing such a great job that he's out of all the wingers they've got, I think he's the one that they have no questions about at the moment, because he's getting some trust from the coaching staff and his playing group. And Adi Savia, probably the biggest thing for me for Adi is not surprising how he's played, because he does it every week.
Yep.
He plays from the soul every single week, and when he comes off the field, whether that's been subbed or as it was on the weekend after 80 minutes, you know he's left everything out there. He's left everything out on the field. And to do that after the disappointment of not getting the captaincy, but also remaining true to his values of being the leader that the team needed, that's been outstanding to me. That's been outstanding to see him. He didn't need that accolade. He didn't need that title or the armband of captain to still be the leader through his actions. And that, I still think he should be the captain. I won't go away from that one. But whether he is or not, it's not going to deter him or change the way that he's playing for the group. And hopefully when they go up to the Northern Hemisphere, where they play Japan on the 26th, and that's followed by England, then Ireland, then France, and then they finish with Italy in a really tough 5-week span. But I think he'll be a real leader on that tour for the group to come away with. So look forward to that. Look forward to that trip out of them, and look forward to them finishing that season strongly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these tests. Juggernauts, going up to the Northern Hemisphere and going to give these guys another crack, especially after last year's Rugby World Cup. I think there'll be some feelings with France, especially after their opening test when they went down to France. But yeah, they're facing Ireland. So there'll be a bit of controversy, or maybe some high tensions when it comes up to that matchup too. So, yeah, and Italy's going to be an awesome test. I know that Italians are always passionate when they play, especially against the All Blacks. So that'll be exciting too. Japan, I think they got Japan at the end of October. So that's their next test. And I spoke about it with Will on Pacific Mornings that now the team and the players involved in the All Blacks will probably look a lot different to their mid-year tests because now the NPC would have been wrapping up by then. They've got a lot of these players who have missed out in that selection that would be keen to make their way into that test. So you got to prepare for a couple of those NPC boys to get the call up and for a bit of reshuffle when it comes to the end of year test for the All Blacks. But I'm excited to see who Scott Robertson decides to keep and who decides to replace and decides to bring in. So yeah, I think a lot of those, there's been a lot of good rugby played over the NPC. I think there's been more than there's been quite a lot of 50+ games being played, being scored throughout the competition. So there's some good rugby played here in in Aotearoa. So yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes and how that influences the end of year tests.
Move now to the NRL.
Yes.
Big weekend.
Massive.
It was a huge weekend coming up.
Yep.
But the big weekend last week, it was a shootout of 4 teams. The last 4 teams remaining in the semi-finals to see who goes through to the coveted grand final this weekend.
Yeah.
We started on Friday night with the Storm taking on the Roosters.
Yeah.
Roosters outstanding against Manly. Storm flying. I don't think anybody could see this scoreline coming.
Yeah.
48-18, 30-point winners.
Massive, huge for the Melbourne Storm. We talked about it on the Saturday show, but we expected a little bit more of a tight contest between both teams. But man, the Melbourne Storm had just firing on all cylinders from number 1 to number 17, even to the coaching staff as well. Craig Bellamy, in his usual fashion, is just spraying the window with all the spit and that just yelling at the window, man, trying to get the most out of his players. But you could see how much it meant to the Melbourne Storm to get back into the grand final. I think they haven't visited the grand final since 2020 when they beat the Penrith Panthers the last time. So it's been quite a while for those players. Throughout those years, there's been a lot of injuries, a lot of key players missing throughout their competition, but also they have met the Penrith Panthers in the preliminary finals where they got knocked out last year. And also in some other finals games where they've been knocked out too. So yeah, the Melbourne Storm have a huge task on hand, but I thought they looked outstanding. Jerome Hughes, again, he stakes his claim as the best halfback in the whole game throughout the whole year. And we talked about it the other day, Willie, but we expect him to get the Dally M. The Dally M's will be decided tomorrow night. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes, because despite how the Dally M people's feelings towards who should get the Dally M. We look back at last year when Sean Johnson had the best season of his career, probably the best halfback in the game, and they gave it to someone else. So yeah, I'm interested to see if Jerome Hughes, who deservedly should get the best halfback, or to get the Dally M Player of the Year, but also the halfback of the year too. There's an awesome moment where he took on the line 5 meters out and he just grabbed the ball and he ran straight through the Roosters defense. I thought, as a player and as a spectator, when you watch a halfback just charge at you, Angus Crichton was on the other side of that tackle, but he ran through him and scored. That must hit your morale, like your ego, because if a half runs at me and he breaks through the line, he doesn't want to pass. Usually halves want to chuck it outside or chuck a front door, and especially when you're close to the line, or just put a little nudge through. But when he tucked the ball under and attacked that line, I thought that was the beginning of the end of the Roosters, and I spoke about it. We spoke about it as well on Saturday, but there was a moment where the whole spine, walking back after that, maybe I think it was that try or a try from Ryan Pappenhausen, and they're walking back and the cameras got panned over to them. And I've never seen this before. I usually see maybe the 2 halves or the halves and the fullback, but all 5 of their spine were all. So you've got Ryan Pappenhausen at the 1, number 6 Cameron Munster, number 7 Jerome Hughes. You've got Harry Grant in there as well, and all 4 of them. Sorry, they're all like walking together and just. It looks like they're plotting, like when those super villains are like rubbing their hands together and they're plotting their what they're gonna do next. it was a rugby league fan's like dream, just to see how intact and how clinical they are in terms of planning their next move out. And I thought that it was a huge moment. I screenshotted it on my phone when I was watching it because I thought that it was so good and admirable as a rugby league player, but also as a fan too. So yeah, big up to the Melbourne Storm. Your thoughts, Willie?
Yeah, I thought they were quality throughout the night. Didn't get off to the best start at all. Losing Nelson for that high tackle. We all know now that he'll miss the grand final and he'll be a loss. The Roosters took advantage of the man over and ended up scoring and taking a 6-0 lead. And somebody asked me, did I ever feel like the Roosters were going to kick on? And I wasn't confident in the Storm at that moment, but I just wanted to see what the response would be once they got back to 13 men.
Yeah.
And as you said, Jerome Hughes scored that try, and that was the third try that they had attacked down that right-hand edge. They had attacked the left-hand edge of the Roosters, going at Angus Crichton and Luke Keary, and beaten them in different ways all three times. The first one, Pappenhausen reads that defensively they're tight and burns them for speed. The second one, because of his threat of his speed, he spooks Keary to overchase and he drops Nick Meaney back inside. He makes the break. Angus Crichton couldn't close the gap quick enough, passes it to Hughes. He scores his first one. Because of the workload and because of the fatigue factor and because of the joy they were having, Jerome Hughes just said, give me the ball, I'm going to have a crack at you. He goes at both Keary and Crichton. Keary falls off the tackle. He has too much momentum and strength and desire, just drags it, Crichton over the line and scores his second try. So, yeah, I thought Jerome Hughes was outstanding, but their game planning was exceptional in their execution. The Roosters, the quality side that they are, they had a moment in the second half where they scored a couple of tries back-to-back and they ended up putting themselves 6 points behind, 24-18, I think it was. But then the Storm just went into overdrive. They just went into overdrive, wore them down. The last couple of tries I thought were flattering to the Storm. Quality nonetheless, especially when Munster got his hands on the ball and his footwork and going at tired defenders. But I thought that the toll of defending so much pressure throughout the game just took its toll at the end. They were fatigued and they were demoralised, and the Storm more than worthy of booking their ticket first to go to the grand final. So they went through first on Friday night. They're sitting there waiting for the second game, Panthers against the Sharks. I'm going to brag.
Yep.
I'm going to brag.
Yep. You did. Yeah.
I predicted that the Panthers would win by 20.
Yeah.
And that was the case. 26-6 to the Panthers.
Yeah.
How did you see that game?
Man, awesome game. It was a close contest in about maybe the first 15, 20 minutes. I thought Braden Trindle again on the Sharks' edge his kicking game was putting a lot of pressure on their back three, but also they looked really in the fight. They kept the Panthers defense guessing. It was a wet game, so it was raining. There was a couple of errors as well in those first 20 minutes, but I think once they locked the score at 2-2 after a couple of penalties from both sides. But I think there was a 40-20 from Nathan Cleary that opened up the game. And when that 40-20 happened, I'm like, man, here it comes. Like, this is when the Panthers are just going to roll them. Because when a team keeps a side like the Panthers out of scoring over the first 20, 30 minutes, you expect the Panthers to score because of the attacking prowess that they have. But when there was no scoring up until that 40-20, I was like, man, here we go. It's going to start. And that's exactly what happened. And, young Paul Alamoti over in the beautiful play out on their left edge. But I thought, when I saw that try and I saw how easily Paul Alamoti went through, and I went, damn, that's crazy. And I messaged my brother's group chat and I was like, man, he's so good, Nathan Cleary. His mind and the way that they're able to manipulate the defense to open up for those scoring opportunities is just outstanding. And I thought it was just so great for the young. I think he's 20 or 21 years old, young Alamoti, and usually it's Stephen Crichton on that left edge, but for him to score another try in that left corner for the Panthers, I thought it was quite special. So yeah, and then in the second half, you just saw the Panthers just continue to roll on and shut out the Sharks. And it was unfortunate for the Sharks because they had a great performance the week prior, but yeah, they were met by an unstoppable force, which was the mighty Penrith Panthers.
Katoa scores in the corner. Only puts him a couple of scores behind. Did you feel like they could come back? Win?
Yeah. You always, as a fan and as a spectator, you always think that there is a fighting chance when teams come in within inches, and I think, especially with rugby league or in any team sport, it's about momentum and it's about moments as well. So I think Panthers won those moments and won that momentum back, and they were able to put their foot on their throat, and really really stay calm and stay composed. I watched their documentary on YouTube, and just the reassurance that the head coach and the captain and the halves give their players about when they're in moments of, whether they're in tight matches or whether they're in moments that really can influence their game, to stay calm, stay composed, and just focus on what's in front of them and play what's in front of them. So, and I think that's what they did. They did well.
And this has been a mark of them as champions the last 5 years, I suppose, is their patience and their ability to stay in grinds for as long as it takes. We've seen them come out and burst and blow teams off the park early, but they've also shown, as they did on the weekend, a patience to stay with it and just stick to their processes, whether it takes 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 70 minutes. And it took about 65 minutes on the weekend for Alamoti to score that try. Give him some breathing space, and then with 6-7 minutes to go, they score again. I think it was Willie and Matty off the kick off Luai to finally give them that 20-point margin. They just have that discipline and that belief in each other and in their processes and in their plan that it'll work out. Regardless of how the game is going, they stick to what they do. And eventually they know that it's going to wear down the opposition. And this is what makes it so amazing for this week, and so attractive as a grand final. I'm expecting one of the best grand finals ever coming up this week. Not scoreline wise. I don't know if it'll be like the Broncos and Cowboys where it comes extra time and somebody kicks a field goal. Not because of that. I just think it's going to be an intense bashathon for almost the 80 minutes. It's going to be that high intensity, that much of a chess match, that both teams aren't going to give anything to each other.
Who breaks first?
That's it, and that's what I think is going to happen. We'll speak more about the grand final on our radio show on Saturday morning. There's a lot of stories to be told between now and the grand final. One of those stories has already been told with Nelson Asofa Solomona. Another one of those stories is Nathan Cleary and his shoulder that he was holding, how he comes through. We'll be more informed on Saturday morning, so please click in 5:31 PI, 8 o'clock for Pacific Grandstand. As we said, Matty, this is our last episode. Our last episode for season 1.
Cue the sad music, man. Jeez.
We go back 17, 18 weeks, as this is week 18. Who would have known that we would have had a season 1 at the start of all this? We sort of fell upon this podcast, if you like. Man. It was never anyone's intention. Because of our radio show, we decided to film a guest who came in, and timing-wise, it was best to do it through the week in the studio, and it ended up being a bit of a feel of a podcast, and the studio the next time was busy. We had to set up here, and we have this set up now. And what are your thoughts on how we've grown and where we where we lay our roots to start with to where we are now.
Yeah, it's grown exponentially. I think I'll use a news term in this explanation. Exponentially growth of this podcast. I think we were reflecting on it before we went on air, but it really started with you, Willie, with the Pacific Grandstand show on Saturdays. Then I put my hand up to join in on the Pacific Grandstand show, and then Eroti approached us who's our lovely cameraman, and he approached us to film a bit of our snippets and from the show and put them on.
That's a nice description. He is a lovely man.
Lovely cameraman. I'll say that. He's the mastermind, And so he offered to do that. And then he roped in Ruth, who's our digital woman, and she helped, facilitate a lot of our social media presence, but also give us some ideas for the show. And then we moved in from the studio right into here overtime. I remember that first time when we walked in, we were interviewing Kaya Brown, your niece, who was just about to go to the Olympics. And we come in here, and we see this beautiful setup. The couches are set up like this. They've got the big screens. Stole it from the boardroom, from the boardroom to come and produce this beautiful overtime sign on here. And then we obviously, with being in the wave room, we adopted the lovely sound guy as well. I'll call you lovely too, Ruth. Sorry, I didn't say lovely digital woman, but the lovely sound guy, Harry who has been setting up the mics, and you might see him in a couple of shoots, but setting up the mics for us. And then we've also adopted the lovely news digital guy, Joey Safiti, who came on us for some of the shoots and to capture some of the moments where we went out to the field. And then also throughout the midst of that, we adopted Mr. Aaron Ryan, our TMO, our tiny man official, to go and do some amazing funny stories, but also provide a new dynamic to our show as well. So we've collected a lot of different great people over our time at the Overtime podcast. We've tried new things. We've had some people on from broadcasters, from students, from NRL legends, rugby league legends. We've had community people too. We've had some of our PMN staff, some of the New FM hosts. We've had Bossman Louis on too before he left. We've had a guest host, Joseph Safiti, as well, who joined on, and also Aaron Ryan, who guest host when you were away too. So we've had a lot, man. We've played games. We've had some fun, had some good laughs, and yeah, it's just crazy to know that it's been 18 episodes all in one season, but we've done and covered so much ground. And I thought that it's been a beautiful, it's flourished beautifully into what it is now.
Have you had any favourite segments or favourite moments in the show?
Oh, maybe when you're away, bro. Maybe when you're away, when all the pressure was on, because you usually do the hosting and you usually intro the show, and they handed me the mic to introduce the show. Aaron's on this couch, I'm in your hot seat, and you got to open the show, and I butchered the start of it, and I said, "Oh, welcome back to Pacific Grandstand." I'm like, "Oh shit, that's not the right one." But I think another highlight for me was definitely the Sorensens. I thought that was quite cool. Just and I spoke to you about it off air, but the way that the Sorensens have been such an important for our growth of Pacific Rugby League people in Aotearoa, New Zealand. They've had such a pattern career that my parents were really informed about. You were really chuffed about having them in. I remember seeing how wide your eyes got when you're asking every single question to them. So I knew it meant a lot to you just to have them in the hot seat. But it was monumental, that interview, and I think that for them to come and accept the interview, but also to accept it being on our Overtime podcast, that was really, really special for me as a youngster when I sat here and I was just wanted to listen and observe, and I could listen to you guys chat for hours because that's how much I love sport and how much I love the game too. So that was a highlight, and maybe my last highlight would be the time I went to go see Ari Savia during the Moana Pacifica shoot. I thought that moment when we saw Fakaalofa Tanu Manga, Ari Savia, and also Lauli, Sir Michael Jones up on that stand, but also to hear them endorse our podcast too, to say that they recognise the show and the podcast. I thought that was quite special as well. What are your thoughts, bro? Because you're the main man, you're the host.
No, well, this is this is, as you've said and you've introduced everyone, this is simply a massive team effort. And the team has grown from the initial 3 that started.
Yep.
It was us two and Iroti, the lovely Iroti. He was our cameraman. We were in the studio, and then Ruth came in to oversee things, and she transferred all the footage onto the digital and sent it out to all you viewers. And then move in here, obviously this is Haz's domain, and he's in charge of all the sound. And then Joey came in to trip up over all the cords and make a mess around everywhere and then take over. And then TMO offered his services, and it added an hilarious spin to the show. My favourite segments, 2 of mine are the same as yours. The Adi Savia opportunity to interview and watch a changing of the landscape of New Zealand sport. It was spoken of as a bit of a Tom Malolo moment to see someone sacrifice the opportunity to, in the immediate, to win for a bigger franchise, to sacrifice that to almost, as he put it, almost come home. And whilst he'll never play for Samoa because where he is at as a career and the break that he'd have to have time-wise, this is as close to it for him, and he's giving back, and he feels that connection to being back playing with his brother, and to be in that press conference that day and that moment was amazing. That was awesome to be part of, and for our podcast to be afforded the opportunity to be there and ask questions and interview, as you said, 3 of the greatest Pacifica players the game of rugby union has ever seen, was an honour and a massive win for us as a show. And then I've heard that the Sorensens were coming over and were going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. On the off chance, Don Mann, our CEO, found me an email for Kurt, Kurt Sorensen, and I chucked him an email just on a whim, really, to see if he would like to come on. And I thought it was just going to be him. And we end up getting him and his brother, who was such a legendary tandem on the field, Kurt and Dane Sorensen, and their uncle Bill, who sadly has passed away. His daughter Debbie came in. Yeah. And we had all 3 of them on the couch. And to be able to sit with them, you're right, I was buzzing. And it was one of those. I had a real sleepless night beforehand, being really nervous about asking the right questions and setting the right environment. And probably good for me that I had the radio show first. And it took away some of those nerves, and I wasn't able to get real giddy. But I came in and just sit down. Again, that was a real win for our show. In our first season, to have legends like that, legends and pioneers for Pacifica athletes in Aotearoa, to play for New Zealand and play for our country. Brian Williams, one of the real pioneers also in rugby union. But to have so many of that generation, with the Arkois and the Luluais en masse playing for that Kiwi team, from that great Auckland side that we spoke about, that beat France, Australia and Great Britain all in that month, and then to have them sitting here, I still get goosebumps now to say I'm sitting where they sat at that time. The other one was a bit of fun for us that I really enjoyed doing, was going to the streets and talking about Origin. Oh, yeah. That was awesome. We met some real awesome characters, and it's the characters and the guests that really make the show. They really make the pieces what they are. They give the golden nuggets. And we went to Otahu to start with, met some amazing characters out there, and then going to Avondale was awesome as well. And going to your neck of the woods, and not as forthcoming in Avondale. It was tough getting a word out of people, but what we found was that the people that wanted to talk, they were passionate about Origin. And,
Yeah, man.
you know, whether they're blue or maroon, they're hearty either way. So those are my moments from the first season. But I just want to take this opportunity, I suppose, to thank everybody. Thank Ruti, Ruth, Joey, Haz, yourself, TMO, and all our guests for helping us make season 1 what it's been. And we hope that season 2 is bigger and better and brighter, and we can get just as good a quality of guests next season. You say, in the meantime, you're off to Niue this week?
Yep.
Tell us about that trip.
Yeah, so I'm off to Niue on on Saturday. So heading over for the Constitution Day, 50th anniversary of Niue's Constitution. So it's going to be great. I'll be there for 2 weeks, and I think it'll be good to go home and sort of unpack some things about my job, about being a journalist, but also get to soak in some of those celebrations for Niue. I know this is a huge celebration for them, so it's going to be great to head back and give back in some capacity. I think it's a sort of perfect time for me in my career, and also where I'm at, where I want to connect with my culture again. And I think it'll be a huge opportunity to see some family, but also to do some good work over there too. Yourself, Willie, you're heading back to England? Yeah,
I'm heading back. Going back to my second home, back to the UK, and going over with the Tour Samoa.
Nice.
As the assistant coach of the side. We're in the planning process now, and we'd set off to Sydney in 2 weeks, where we assemble camp and put the players together and do all the little logistical things. And there's some media obligations that the players have to do, so we'll get that out of the way before we get down to the hard work when we get to the UK. And then obviously the tour's for 2 weeks. There's 2 tests. First one is on the 27th at Wigan, and the second one's on the 2nd of November in Headingley at Leeds, my old stomping ground, my old home ground. Yep. So a bit of another homecoming for me, which I'm excited about. Then I'm sticking around. I'm going to stick around in the UK for a couple of months. Fortunately, I'll be able to do our Pacific Grandstand show, and we'll be still doing our Zoom link-ups to have our chats, which I love having and I look forward to having. But yeah, I haven't seen my youngest son for just under 2 years now. Wow. And I'm really looking forward to catching up with him. I had a good chat to him and this morning, actually, and he spoke about how he wanted to come into camp early, but he had some work to do. And I said, look, son, I've got a couple of months. He goes, yeah, but I want to see you. I haven't seen you for ages. Wow. So I'm really looking forward to going to see them and doing the work we do and having a cold Christmas, having a hopefully a white Christmas over there. But yeah, that'll be me, and then we'll come back, we'll reconvene, and we'll look to get season 2 underway next year. Season 2 of Overtime coming out to you in 2025.
Yeah, we'll crack on. Before we finish, Ruth, did you have something for us before we?
Yes, we can play a little game before.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm just going to give you guys these whiteboards.
So currently, Ruth is just setting up a game for myself and Willie before we.
Okay.
She's got a mic on her as well, so you'll hear her everything about what she says.
Ruth isn't just the lovely Ruth; she's the quizmaster as well.
She's put us through the rigor for these games.
The game is how well do you know your host?
Oh.
And so I'm going to give you a keyword.
Yep.
And you guys are just going to have to try and connect minds and hopefully write the same word. Got it?
Yep. All right. Yep.
Let's see how well you know your host. Okay. Your keyword is sport. That's an answer. Okay, show your boards in 3, 2, 1. Wow!
Oh,
you guys got it right. Rugby league.
Oh, nice, bro. Yep.
You're strong.
He does love me.
All right. Okay. Your second keyword is NRL team. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh.
Oh, okay. The love is real.
That was. We both were Warriors, by the way. In the first game, the first word that we wrote for sports was both rugby league. So yeah.
Oh, I didn't know there was an eraser here. I'm using my jumper. Shot. Fresh.
Okay.
Uncle.
Your next keyword is your favorite Super Rugby team.
Do we get it?
You guys are doing really well.
Do we both get it?
I'm really surprised.
Oh, the Blues. So
very
we
well.
both said the
I
Blues.
nearly put a
Highlanders? Nah, straight
Nearly
the
did,
Blues,
nearly
man.
did.
Oh, Moana. Oh, the draw as well. Oh, sorry. Oh, where?
Okay. Best Super Rugby player of this
Oh.
year. Of this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, shucks.
Sheesh.
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a real good question.
Just do the one that we both think of, bro. Come on. Just think of the first person that we think of. Yep, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Oh,
We get it. Oh, D-Mac. Oh, David McKenzie. Yeah.
You guys are doing really well. I actually thought you guys were gonna do worse.
Oh,
I
man.
thought you would, but okay. Last one would be the best. I forgot what it was called now. The best team, Blues or Maroons.
The Blues, of course. Then. Oh, shut. The Maroons.
I'm pretty sure Matt just admitted that the Blues was the best. We caught that on 4K.
Oh, no, shucks.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty much the game, and you guys did really well.
we
You guys
nailed
did
it.
really
We know each
Nailed
other
it.
really well.
Yeah. Before we finish though, but Matt, can you actually name a fullback now for your?
A fullback? Do you want a fullback?
Can you name a fullback?
Can you name an All Black fullback?
All black fullback?
Well, you couldn't name it at the time.
Actually, I can name a fullback.
He still can't name a fullback.
Will Jordan is the fullback that I choose. Shout out to that moment at the start of the season. Fuck, that was crack up, man. You know what? I had a hard morning that morning.
I gave him 4 days
Oh,
to prep. Write your team down. Guest. I gave him an opportunity to sort of get some time together. Matty, we'll come to you first. Fullback, that's a hard one. This is not off to a good start.
Oh, jeez. That's crack up.
Great work, guys. Well, that was your game of How Well Do You Know Your Host, and you guys did great. You guys got 6 out of 6. Amazing.
Got that on camera as well?
And that is overtime here on 531. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's been episode 18. That's been season 1. I hope you've enjoyed watching us over the course of the last couple of months. Come back next year, 2025, season 2 of Overtime as part of our Pacific Grandstand show here on 531 PI, the station that brings Pacific people together. We out.
Team. Yeah. OT.